Hey, all right. Coming to ya live from WRUEN, almost frozen Tennessee. It's the Scribbling Woman.
I'm Nancy Rue, and you're Scribbling Woman too, so welcome back. Now, before we raise our mugs, as we always do when we get together, I'd like for you first to raise your hand if, at any point in your writerly life, you have ever asked the question, am I bad at this? And then I want you to keep your hand raised if ever, even for an instant, you have ever answered that question with, I think I am bad at this. I'm imagining a sea of sheepishly waving arms in the air because we all question ourselves. As part of being a creative person, we don't get grades. No one's giving us a quarterly eval, so we're constantly assessing ourselves, right? Which means that we are the ones who have to believe in us. And that isn't always easy to maintain, especially when we're being turned down by agents and editors. If our indie sales are not meeting the cost of publishing in the first place, if we walk into a bookstore and the sheer volume, pardon the pun, of other people's writing starts closing in on us, if we have a loud inner critic, you know, the boho, big old hairy obstacle, who won't let us write a sentence without editing it, it's natural to have doubts. What's not natural is to allow those doubts, those bohos, to at the very least put a knot in our style, and at the most and the worst, paralyze us completely. Well, that doesn't have to happen, Scribbly. So let's go in and see what we can do about the concept of bad as we continue to build our writerly lives from where we are. The first thing we need to do is define bad as we think it applies to our writing. Does it mean no talent, no aptitude, no gift? No. Because you wouldn't be listening to this podcast if that were the case. Something in you whispers, you are a writer. Does it mean some parts of writing don't come easily to you? Well, yeah, that's everybody. Scribbling author and gifted poet Susan Plett can create characters that you want to sit with next to a stream and talk about magic. But she will be the first to tell you, my fiction is remarkably plot-free. I myself feel confident about most of my story writing, except describing outdoor setting. I don't know the difference between a ridge and a meadow when it comes to geography. I personally think the reason that Ernest Hemingway's writing is so spare is that he wasn't very good at describing body language, so he just didn't do it. Or does bad mean you have to do multiple revisions? Join the writing club. We'll talk more about this one in a minute. For now, just know that nobody, and I mean nobody, writes anything from start to finish without something that needs to be changed. Seriously, nobody. Does bad mean there are parts of the process we just don't like, such as line editing or writing a synopsis or marketing? I don't like cleaning toilets. I don't like putting together receipts for the tax guy or pumping gas in my car. That doesn't mean I'm bad at those things. One of the dictionary definitions of bad is actually unpleasant or unwelcome. Give a thumbs up if you welcome going through your manuscript looking for typos, and I will bow down in awe of you. Most dangerous of all, does bad mean not perfect? Because that's the kind of dualistic thinking that makes really good writers abandon their manuscript and become accountants. There's a lot of distance between really bad and not perfect. Now, if we define bad as being below standard, here's some good news. Some parts of the creative process are supposed to be just that. So we must refuse to call the following things bad. Any of the ideas that come to us as we brainstorm, we just get everything out there and then keep the best stuff. Our first drafts should never be called bad. They are, by their very definition, a hot mess. If you aren't reading through even your second draft and finding things that make you say, what was I thinking? You are a rare writer indeed. Now, that doesn't mean that our earliest attempt is a total dumpster fire and we have to trash it and start all over. It means we tweak here, we rewrite there, and we congratulate ourselves on being real, authentic writers. It's actually too bad in some respects that we don't write on typewriters anymore, because back in those days, the number of crumpled pieces of paper on the floor around you was an indication of how hard you were working. We're supposed to be messy and clumsy and maybe all over the place in the writing process. That's why we call it a process. So let's consider what happens when we constantly badger ourselves with that question, am I bad at this? We immediately create an obstacle for ourselves, and a big old hairy one. We become anxious. We spend more time gnawing our nails than we do typing. We question every word we put down, and there goes the joy that's essential to anything creative. We go down the dead-end path of, this isn't coming out the way I see it in my mind. Or, so if I can just get this first chapter perfect, I can move forward. Or this is taking so long, the trend will be over before I ever finish. No one's ever going to read this. Actually, they won't. Not in its current state. They're not supposed to. If the questioning goes on for too long, we find ourselves not wanting to sit down and write because we're convinced it's going to be bad. The truth is, it's never going to be good if we don't get in there and play. And of course, if we convince ourselves that we're bad at this, we can't let ourselves share our work with our fellow scribblies, much less an agent or an editor or our indie audience. Fear of being told we're bad at this cuts us off from the very feedback that we need. If you have someone who is likely to say, you're really not very good at this, are you? Never, under any circumstances, show your work to that person. If they don't know how to say, I really like some of this, could you work on this over here? That is a blocked artist. They are toxic. Avoid them. What we need is a replacement for that question. Now, in the Scribbling Woman Interactive Companion, we have a whole section on the Scribbling Woman Lexicon in which we replace certain terms that we've heard with real scribbling women ones. For example, not goals, but intentions, not work, but creative pursuits. So what if we replace the question, am I bad at this, with, let's say, where am I getting the idea that I might be bad at writing? Is the source an outside element, like a society that says it's not valid unless you're making money at it? Or is it you yourself? Do you need to go deeper and figure it out so you can see that it's completely unreliable? What if you're saying to yourself, oh, I've never really been good at anything, or I'm just not a winner, or I'm afraid of being laughed at again? Those are the things we need to consider, not am I bad at being a writer? What are the challenges that seem to stand in the middle of my path and won't let me pass? That's a much better question. Is it my critique group? Is it my fear of rejection? Is it the sense that if I let this out there, it won't be mine anymore? So the natural next question is, how can I meet those challenges and ask them to step aside? Stop going to that critique group, send out 5 queries, get a couple of rejections and realize, oh, I'm still alive. Or share that story with someone you trust and find out that they actually complete the story. A story is not just for you, but for the person who reads it. And finally, the question might be, what do I enjoy least about the process? Can I outsource that somehow? You think you're bad at formatting like I do? It's just tedious and I get impatient, so I bartered with a friend to do it. Or can you find some satisfaction in it, even if it isn't the fun part? I like to think of Michelangelo chiseling away at that block of marble until he found the angel. I almost always have to cut words, and that's how I think of it, so that then I can sit back and go, yeah, this is so much tighter now, even if the process itself wasn't that much fun. Now, whether you see that you need to change your definition of bad, or accept the messy parts of the process, or look at why you're beating yourself up and resolve that, or replace the question with one that will actually move you forward, or all of these, we need to look at our next steps, as we've been doing in the last several episodes. away from our doubts and into a commitment to our intentions. These are some suggestions that have worked for me and other scribbling women. Surround yourself with authentically encouraging people, or even just one. People who will tell you what they love about what you've written and then ask questions about things that aren't clear. Not your plot pretty much sucks, but your premise really has potential. Can you up the tension in this part? Not your characters just aren't real, but I want to know more about this one. Can you talk about her? Since self-doubt comes from, well, yourself, most of its eradication is up to you. So put the opposite of that doubt on a sticky note and display it on your computer. This is the old-fashioned way. So if you think you might be bad at making your writing delicious, post, "I'm working on choosing succulent verbs." If you consider your writing to be generic, then post, "I'm going for the details. I'm going in. The more specific, the better." If you bludgeon yourself for taking forever to write this dadgum book, then post, "The best things take time." Another thing that scribbling women often do is create an image for each of these things that challenges you, makes you wonder if you're just bad at this thing, and picture yourself meeting it in a concrete way. For example, is that critic with pursed lips and the red pencil giving you grief about your point of view? Then you take a free online course about point of view and say to Raisin Lips, "How do you like me now?" Or are you picturing a big-bellied coach in your head yelling at you for being undisciplined? Tell it to do 100 push-ups, its own self, while you set up a one-on-one with a mentor. Is the church lady in your brain saying, "Cleanliness is next to godliness, and you really should be cleaning your house instead of wasting your time on this nonsense"? Set her to the task of finding that in the Bible, because it's not there, while you spread all your ideas out on the floor until a story starts to come together. Because what God does is He gives us babysitters and mental health days for just that reason. Next, consider the things that you could outsource, the things that are truly a struggle for you and aren't part of the creative process and may even sap your creative energy, like editing, formatting, organizing your files. And if you can't afford to hire a pro, somebody who loves to do that kind of thing needs something from you. So author Barb Haley edits and formats my indie novels and other books in exchange for my help with her concepts for her new novels. And finally, body doubling works well. You know how if you don't really like organizing your closet or chopping up veggies or folding laundry, it's so much easier to do when somebody's there with you. The same applies to writerly tasks. So that's why we offer silent scribbling. Scribblies get together for an hour and a half on Zoom. We mute ourselves. We all write, and it's amazing what gets done. That's why you see people sitting next to each other in a coffee shop, tapping away at their laptops. They're not talking, but they're making it happen. That's why even texting a friend and saying, "I don't want to do this," and then just starting to do it somehow makes it happen. Most of all, Scribblies, as you grapple with, "Am I bad at this, boho?" and shape your next steps away from it, it's essential to take care of your writerly soul on a regular basis. And this all is not simply a mind-conscious decision. This is a directive arising from your spirit. If not, you wouldn't be asking, "Am I bad at this?" You would be saying, "I am bad at this," and walking away. So, in my opinion, always consider the spiritual source of your gift, no matter what shape that takes for you, and give it your attention. Maybe you'll journal, pray, meditate, take yourself away from the work and give your soul some space. If you want, you can go back to episode number 19, which might inspire you in this regard. Just remember, you are never alone. If you take nothing else away from this episode, keep this with you. Unequivocally, without even toying with it, the answer to the question, "Am I bad at this?" is a firm, quiet, confident no. The boho who asks this does so out of fear. So give it a cookie, pat it on the head, and it will go away. If you can't see yourself doing that, reach out for some help. I have 2 things that might do that for you. One is, again, the Scribbling Woman Interactive Companion, which guides you through all of this in a really gentle way that's unique to you. The other is the Scribbling Woman online community. And if you want to find out more about that, simply go to www.nancyrue.com and you'll find out how to join us. And actually, if you really want some one-on-one, you have a couple of questions, you just need a little bit of encouragement, you can direct message me on Facebook at Nancy Rue or on Instagram at The Scribbling Woman. Because you are the future of writing. If the concept of bad stops you in your beautiful tracks, then something that needs to be written will be left unsaid. We can't let that happen. So reach out. And until next time, Scribblies, scribble on.